Good morning. Welcome to Science Saturday, July 5th, day 186 of the Daily QCI. Today for Science Saturday, we are going to look at how to better read a research paper. And I did this mostly for myself because I needed to reflect on this and make sure that I was doing it better. I felt like I've been a little lax in actually looking at the details of a paper. I put this together so that we could both go through how to improve looking at research. It's Science Saturday, so all the better. It's also raining out, so it's a perfect day to sit down with a cup of coffee and learn about research. If you've ever been blindsided by a headline that said coffee cures cancer, only to find out that the study was done on 6 mice in somebody's basement, then you've been duped, like most of us have, with headlines that are meant to sensationalize what an actual paper is saying. So let's break down the components first. So obviously we have a title. Sometimes the title is accurate, and sometimes it is more like clickbait. That can depend on the authors and the journal. These days there are quite a few journals that you can, as a researcher, can pay to get into, and there's other journals that are just free. There are some journals that are peer-reviewed and quite strict. So you need to make sure you know which of those you're looking at when you're looking at the title. The abstract. In this particular article, we have a pretty detailed abstract that breaks it down into sections. Not all of them do this, but this is kind of like the trailer in a movie. It summarizes the purpose, the methods, the results, the conclusion, and it sounds nice, but it's often an interpretation, not a detailed explanation of what was done. So you have to be a little careful with just looking at the abstract. Moving on, we have an introduction. This kind of sets the stage. It provides background, more detailed rationale, and introduces the research question or hypothesis in play. Next up, we have the methods. Some might consider the most important part of a research paper. This is how we did the thing. It includes sample sizes, the design, the tools, the controls, the variables, the statistical tests that are used. This section should be detailed. It should take some study to figure it all out. If it looks vague or is really easy to understand, it likely was not well done. All right, let's move ahead to results. Results should include what they found, not what they think it means. That's important. It should be the raw data, the tables, the outcomes, the statistics. This is not the place for interpretation at this point. This is maybe number 2 location to look, because this is where the truth lives, assuming that data has been input correctly and reported correctly. And next, we have the author's interpretation. This is a long set of results. Here we go. Discussion may also be called a conclusion, and this is where they include their interpretation of what this means. You need to be a little careful here. This is where opinion can sneak in. You need to make sure that what they claim is represented in the results. And then finally, the references section is going to be at the end. This can be important to show you background data, what other articles they're referencing that support the same results. It's a bit of a red flag if all the citations are from the same authors or from really obscure journals. Okay, those are the basics of a paper. We're going to scroll up to the methods section that we consider the most important. Here we go. We're calling this the most important section and not the result because if this is not done correctly, the results are garbage. We need to know that that the authors have used appropriate methods in the research. 3 things we look at here. We look at study design. Is it a random controlled trial? Is it an observational study, cross-sectional study, an anecdote? And this is where this hierarchy of evidence comes into play that can be important. Now, you could have a systematic review of horrible papers, which would make it a poor systematic review. but in general, this hierarchy works. So in this particular case, we're looking at a systematic review. I think it's number 2 on our hierarchy. So something to keep in mind. Next up, we want to know the sample size and how they got the people, how they excluded people. In this particular case, our inclusion criteria are all listed here. Tells us the adults, how studies were analyzed for being included or excluded, and only randomized controlled trials were considered. We're only looking at BDNF changes. And at the beginning of the results section, we learned that a total of 3128 studies were initially identified. After applying their criteria, they had 214 articles. After narrowing it down further for exclusions, non-randomized controlled trials, etc., there were 36 studies that were included in the actual analysis. What you want to look at here, so all these exclusion criteria would be then our item number 3, which is pulling out bias and confounders and things. So controlling for age, sex, lifestyle, or in this case, controlling for studies that only had BDNF, or excluding for only randomized controlled trials. Nicely here, they even provide us a table that shows how they went through their various criteria. So identification, screening, narrows it down till they finally have the 36 that are included. A nice visual of what the words say. Now, how do we read this? We're going to start back up at the abstract again. You want to get the gist of what's going on. What's being studied? Who's being studied on? Is it mice? Is it humans? Is it dogs? This should give you just a general idea of what you're looking at, and maybe even some red flags or some highlights that you're going to want to make. Moving into the introduction, we want to know, why was the study done? Here, they're trying to figure out if exercise or other forms of movement can help to increase brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which is hypothesized to reduce, people with depression have reduced levels of BDNF. So if we can increase BDNF through exercise, will that help with depression? So they're looking at a number of articles to try to figure out if this does what they think it might. Getting into the methods, we've reviewed that. We know that they went through an inclusion and exclusion criteria that seems fairly rigid. And now we want to look at the results carefully. We want to check our tables. We want to look at the confidence intervals, p-values, not just what's written. Does this start to give us the results that confirm or deny our hypothesis? So in this particular study, we come down to this set of words and graphs. And what we can find here is that the dose response demonstrated a significant relationship between exercise dose and levels of BDNF. So now we know that if we have more movement, more exercise, we have more BDNF release. And then, can we now recommend exercise for patients with depression? And then based on the research, their references, what they discovered in this paper, they are proposing preliminary exercise prescriptions for patients with depression. Fascinating. And finally, we want to go to the discussion. And if you read through the discussion, does the discussion reasonably describe what was found in the methods and the results? If it does, it adds more trust to the authors. If they start to get a little excessive or exaggerate the claims, you want to be a little careful. And finally, depending upon the journal style, we do want to know if it's peer-reviewed, and we want to know who was funding. In this particular case, funding was supported by the Southwest University Hospital Horizontal Project. We need to look that up to find out exactly what that is. But if this was a study that said that coffee cured depression and it was paid for by Starbucks, we might want to be a little suspect about what happened here. This has been a long one. Thanks for hanging in there if you did. In a nutshell, don't let the abstract seduce you. Don't take the conclusions or discussions at face value. And spend some time learning how to interpret methods and results, because that's where the truth lives, or where you can uncover trickery if there is any. Keep questioning, creating, and inspiring. I'll see you tomorrow.